Hello, everybody. I wanted to do a quick video about some of the technology that I want to incorporate to better help students outside of the classroom and show you some resources. So I'm going to move, excuse me, if you probably can see my screen right now, from right to left and talk to you about some of the incredible resources that students have to do language learning and also throw in a couple other of my favorites. So, number one, I put a link in the class dojo to Quizlet and also to the Duolingo codes. Um, and I've mentioned these at the parent teacher night. So, I'd like to show you these resources. Number one, the flashcard decks that I give students when I was studying Spanish myself, what I would do is go home with every unit, which was usually about a week. We would go home, write down flashcards on those big, almost recipe index cards. I had like a giant shoebox full of them by the time I left. And it was great practice, and I've learned a little bit more about how to better study with flashcards. But that's one of the reasons why I felt like I could be very successful with Spanish in the classroom. And it's a strategy that I feel I would like to teach students. So as I pull up right now the colors, as you can see, here is the vocabulary for colors. There is also pronunciation. And if I can scroll up, there are a couple activities that students can do, and there's also the ability to print them. So if I can go right here, click on this and go down to print, it's going to give me some options. So right now it has them as a table. Also, please, I know most of us are not made out of money, so I'm going to give students these on black and white. They can color them in, but I expect no one to be doing full color copy prints. I actually had students for class. I gave them the flashcards. So let me see if I can find the flashcards here. You can do them small or you can do them large. So let's say we do large. That's about a couple pages, but I'm usually going to give them small. And then I'm going to do double-sided printing. So most desktop computers at home will do this. So once you did that, here is how they're going to come out. So on each page is going to be, sorry, one second. Yeah, so on each side, when they print out, it's going to be the words on one side in Spanish and their translation on the other. So this is a great resource for students, and you should be able to print them out if students do not have them already and continually work on them. I'm going to do a later video on spaced repetition, which is how we can continue to improve our practice with flashcards. But that's one thing. There's two other ways to do flashcards. And the first one is Duolingo has its own set called Tiny Deck. So if you were doing Duolingo and you like that program, this is one great resource. People have very nicely done a much larger program, but I like the curated decks that they've made is called Memrise. These are all free. Of course, they always advertise you can update to Pro, but you really do not need to update to Pro. So I've experimented with a lot of these. Some students during advisory were doing Kana, um, and this is another flashcard deck, and this is going to build in spaced repetition into whatever you're doing. Next, if you have a Westchester Public Library card, Mango Languages gives you kind of a um, dialogue-based curriculum to work with Spanish or several other languages. I'm really impressed by what languages they have. And I think any language that students are experimenting with, so long as they're doing Spanish, is fine by me. Another two great resources for computer programming, for learning about the SATs, or just quite a bit is Khan Academy. And this has a dashboard, and it's another way that you can track growth continue to practice. I know the school has been using a couple different systems, and because they're using these different systems, they might be shying a little bit away from other programs. But Khan Academy, if you need something quick that you're working with, he has not only videos, he also has practice problems that you can follow along in the dashboard. And then the other one, if you have any computer savvy students, learning how to code with Code Academy. This is how I started to learn how to write Python and another language called Ruby. So if students are passionate about it, I fully advise them to learn it. Now I want to get on to Duolingo because this is the one where I wanted to focus on. Because I studied Spanish way before it came on. I've gotten up to about a level 8, and there's some kind of patches here because they have been updating some of these courses since I've been on it since 2012. Right now, students have gotten the basics and they have been working through food. I haven't done animals too much, but they have done the present tense. We're working right now in seventh grade on question words. So, unfortunately, their curriculum does not match mine, but right now, students are probably at around, I don't think there's a fair comparison, but right now, if students are doing this, they're going to find their ability to decode and to interact with the language to be much more successful. The one thing, and while this does do a great job of, I'm trying to look for a good example here. I would probably say it's in the present. They are going to break down some information, um, both in the lesson and here for tips and notes. It is good to see these in other forms and to find other different ways to practice it. And let me share with you what I've done right now. So I began on French. I went on to Italian, and I've completed the Italian tree. I almost finished the French tree. Um, and I got a lot out of this. The thing that I really wish was is often that I was back in the classroom. This has helped me to study for trips, and it's also helped me to get a much better understanding about how to read complex texts and to understand. Right now, I have been on a 161-day streak with Duolingo. Um, Now, the curriculum I think is great because it's self guiding. So, anybody who has a desire to study something like French doesn't have to wait for the right book or a classroom at least to get started. But I can tell you right now, the further and further I get into studying the language, the more and more I want to communicate with other people. And because of that, I believe that this is a good program to get started. But once again, I want to get to the classroom. Um, the desktop version has something that the cell phone version or the tablet version does not. On the cell phone and the tablet version, they will penalize you, or they're going to tell you to go back and to review. They give you 5 hearts, so it's almost a little bit more like a video game. Um, which is good to get people started, but it can also be frustrated when you're dealing with a new and very difficult lesson to make 5 mistakes. 5 mistakes is natural, and then have to go back and to do a couple review sessions. So the desktop is a great way to do that, and I think it's going to encourage students not to be as discouraged in the beginning. Another thing is I got pretty far ahead, as you can see, up to compound words, excuse me. And this Norwegian one is one of the more advanced ones. But at a certain point, I needed to go back for my own benefit and make sure I just wasn't beating Duolingo, but really working and reviewing and understanding content. So I wish I had time to show you this, but what I want to recommend is that students do 10 experience points. So that's at least a class a day. And if they're doing that, they are going to better understand the language and to be more successful in grammar and in acquiring vocabulary. And I think they'll be able to do more on their own. So thank you very much for listening. And I hope this explains why I use these materials outside of class.